I suggest using 100% pure maple syrup, not pancake syrup. This is maple syrup I got from my friend Sam Thayer from the Forager's Harvest. So I'm going to pour 1.5 cups of 100% pure maple syrup into an 8 to 10 inch skillet. And then I'm going to heat this over medium to medium high heat. I'm going to stir frequently to prevent scorching. This is going to start to boil, and I'm going to watch it real close to make sure that it doesn't boil over. I'll reduce the heat if it starts to froth up too much, because you definitely don't want this boiling over. I'm going to run through some of the other steps that are further down the line, just so you know what the process is like as an overview, and then we will cut back and show you what it looks like as it progresses through those steps. So at first I've got this liquid syrup. I'll bring it to a boil. I'll make sure to scrape the sides down frequently. It'll start to become thicker, and at first it'll start to resemble something similar to peanut butter. When it gets to that sort of consistency, that's when you really want to start stirring and kind of crushing it down and breaking it into pieces. When it becomes more powder-like, you're going to want to turn off the heat and then continue to crush it until it becomes a fine powder. I like using this spoon. This is one that we carved from a piece of hardwood. I like it because it's got this nice flat end to make it easy to get into corners, but it's also got a sort of a spoon and a spatula shape. When the maple sugar is completely dry, we can sift it out, and then we can store the fine material in one jar, and then you can either take the coarser pieces and save them as is. I kind of like them that way because I can throw them into tea or coffee or on a sweet potato or oatmeal. And if you don't want to use the coarser pieces, you can always crush them up or put them through a food processor. When it's all finished, you can just store it in a clean, dry, sealed container in a cool, dark place. Of course, we want to label it with what the contents are and the date that we made it. Maple sugar can be used as a substitution for white sugar at a ratio of 1:1 in most recipes. I like the heat to be somewhere between medium and medium-high, and we can adjust the heat as needed. Some of you may remember when I made some maple sugar over the campfire this summer. This is one thing that's easy to do in the house or outside. The cleanup for the cast iron afterward is really pretty easy. You'll see that we'll have some crystals that will be stuck to the skillet when we're finished. All you have to do to remove those is scrape out what you can with your spoon and then add some hot water and they'll dissolve. Then you can just care for it like you would any other cast iron. I just rinse mine out well with water, and I dry it thoroughly by wiping it with a cotton towel, and then I usually either set it on a warm burner for a moment to make sure that it's dry all the way, or if the oven's already hot, I might just stick it in there for a moment. Every now and then I'll throw another coat of avocado oil on there, just a thin layer, kind of help build up the seasoning and protect it and prevent it from rusting. I like to use avocado oil because it's got a really high smoke point, and of course it's food safe. Okay, I've had this on medium-high heat for about 5 minutes. I started with 1.5 cups, and it's just now starting to boil. So I want to make sure to keep stirring so I don't scorch it. If it starts to froth too much, I'll turn the heat down or reduce the heat. See, it's starting to froth, so I'm going to turn my heat down, and I will keep stirring. There we go. So I'm going to keep stirring this, and it will start to get thicker, so we'll be back shortly. Okay, we're at about 10 minutes in, And I turn the heat back up just a little bit so that we can get some of this water to cook off a little more quickly. I would like to say that this smells amazing. It's got this lovely, rich, buttery maple aroma. The house smells fantastic. This is starting to get thicker and the volume is reducing. This would go a little bit more quickly if I had used a 10-inch skillet rather than an 8-inch skillet, or less volume to begin with. We're at about 15 minutes and I've got the heat turned up a little bit higher so that I can get the water cooked off a little more quickly. I have to be very careful to keep this moving and be ready to lift the pan if this starts to look like it's going to boil over, because we definitely don't want that. We don't want it to scorch, we don't want it to boil over. One tip is if it starts to look like it's going to boil over, just carefully lift it. And keep stirring and we'll give it a chance to cool back down and settle down just a little bit. And back we go. We're at a half hour now, and it has definitely gotten thicker, and if you listen, you can hear that kind of crunchy, gritty sound. So it's starting to form the sugar. You don't want to stop at this point, because if you do, this will turn into a hard brick that will be extremely difficult to clean out. Like you might have to break it with a hammer, and it won't taste very good. So we wouldn't want to waste all of this delicious maple syrup. So we're going to continue cooking. And we're going to be scraping the sides. And the bottom especially. You get more bubbling in the middle because it's hotter in the middle. But you can hear that we're starting to get some crystals. We're at 45 minutes now, and you can see that it's gotten thicker. At this point, we really want to make sure that we continuously scrape the sides so we don't have any scorching. When it goes from liquid to crystal, that happens pretty quickly. We're not at that point yet, but we're getting there. If I wanted this to go more quickly, I could have either used lesser volume or a larger skillet. It's been 50 minutes and we're getting to the stage where the transition's going to happen pretty quickly. So at this point we're going to really want to make sure to stir and kind of fold, kind of like the way you would if you were making scrambled eggs. This is the stage where I say it looks kind of like peanut butter. At this stage we're getting very close. I want to make sure I scrape the sides down. I'll stir this. Kind of fold it over. Be careful not to splash any over because it'll burn you. I'm going to take a moment here real fast and just scrape some of the sugar off of my spoon. There we go. Okay. Make sure to try to fold it some. And sort of churning it over as I stir. I'm wanting to scrape the sides down too. And here we go. Starting to stick together more. Might need to turn the heat down. I'm going to start mashing it into the bottom now. so dry. Turn this over and squish it down into the bottom of the pan. I'm trying to mash some of these clumps up while they're still moist. As it continues to cook, you'll notice that the color will get lighter on the dry pieces. I'm almost to the point where I could sift out the finer pieces and then I can throw the coarser pieces back in if I like. But I'm going to crush this up a little bit more. See how it's starting to look a lot like light brown sugar? We don't want it to be wet when it's finished like light brown sugar, but we want it to be dry like white granulated sugar. Cast iron is really good at maintaining its heat. So if you wanted to, you could turn the heat off at this time. But I'm going to keep crushing this. I'm scraping it down, chopping it up. One thing nice about when I make this over the campfire is I don't have to worry quite so much about the mess I'm making on my stove. The cleanup for this really isn't that bad. I'll just scrape out what I can, and then I will wash this with just plenty of hot water and some scrubbing, and then I'll dry it. Make sure never to put cold water on a hot cast iron skillet because you could temperature shock it and really damage your skillet. Okay, I'm going to take this off and I'm going to sift it at this point. So I'll be right back. The fine maple sugar is dry. So I'm going to just sift it out through a mesh strainer, and then I'll return the coarser pieces to the skillet, which is still warm, to let them cook a little bit longer. And then I can also break them up more. I like to leave some of this coarse. But if you didn't want to, you could either crush it up with a mortar and pestle or put it in a food processor. So this is the coarser things. I'm going to put them back. And this is our fine maple sugar. So I'm going to pour this into a little mason jar. And then I will make sure to put a nice lid on, keep it airtight, and put the date and the contents in it. And these are some of the coarser pieces that we keep, that we use for tea and coffee and oatmeal, pancakes, sweet potatoes, things like that. If I wanted to, I could just keep cooking these. As they become drier, they should become lighter in color. Some of these are still a little moist, so I'm going to just let them sit in here and kind of break them up a little bit more. And then when I'm finished with that, I'll just bottle them, and then they'll be ready for use. Then all that's left is to clean up the kitchen. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I hope that you enjoy your maple sugar. Thanks for watching.